It was the moment that I approached Chris and said to him we should form a band. It was that moment, yeah, pivotal.
My primary instrument is the guitar, and when I was like 8 years old, my mom was like, Chris, you're going to take guitar lessons. And I was like, it sounded like a pain in the ass. And I was like, nah. And she's like, no, you're going to take guitar lessons. And I was like thinking, like trying to weasel out of it or do something else. So I go like, well, what about the trumpet? And she's like, you can't have a sing-along with the trumpet. And I was like, oh, damn, she's right. So I thought a little bit, and I was like, how about the piano? You can have a sing-along with the piano. And my mom goes, you can't take a piano to the beach. And I was like, this bitch is crafty. I got to come up with something. But I was like waffling by now, trying to figure out something. And I said, how about drums? And she was like, I will drown you in the tub before I let you become a drummer. Something words to that. My mom didn't really say that, but it was like basically like, no way, no sing-along, no beach, no drums. And then she started kind of like wheedling with me, and she was like, Chris, if you learn to play guitar, girls will love you. But I was like 8, so I was like, ew, yuck. But nonetheless, I ended up taking a guitar lesson at this guitar store, and the lesson was cool. We learned Glenn Campbell's "Try a Little Kindness." It was the first time I ever looked at a song like from the inside, and I didn't really quite understand what was going on in the lesson, but I got it. I got this idea that there's like guitars and there's chords, and they kind of are the building blocks of songs. And then a song, like people write songs and they think about what they're going to be about. And this is a song that's about like, this worldview that's very kind of like, changing the world kind of worldview. I thought that was really cool. I thought Glenn Campbell was cool. And I walk out of the lesson, and it took place in a guitar store. And, it's my first time, like I walk out and there's like 75 guitars in one place. And I was just walking around looking at these guitars. I come around the corner and there's a Gibson Hummingbird, which is like, it's a very beautiful guitar. And on the pick guard, the thing that's like the like tortoiseshell thing that's next to the sound hole, there is like an engraving of a hummingbird surrounded by kind of flowers. And I remember like seeing, like just being eye level with this hummingbird, and the like combination of like the stillness of the image, but also it's a hummingbird, so like the implied flapping of its wings and the silence of this still guitar mixed with like the kinetic energy of this hummingbird image, like something snapped in my brain. And I've just been fascinated by guitars as objects ever since. And then of course, like Spin Doctors, we have like the best guitar player of the 90s, Eric Shankman. So he's a guitar freak, I'm a guitar freak. And I've just been lucky. I've never been like the greatest guitar player in the world, but I'm a pretty accomplished guitar player now. But I've always had like a head for chords and how chords go together. And, I composed a good deal of the music for the Spin Doctors on the guitar. So yeah, I've got a thing for the guitar as an object and as an instrument and as a tool to like compose songs on. So yeah, guitar, it's my primary instrument.
That's a long one. There's so many. It goes way back. Probably, my brother, who's also a musician. I was lucky enough to have him turn me on to all this music that I might have not found on my own. But I grew up like, a big fan of Kiss. Like I had my wall, I had Kiss posters all over the wall, and that led to like Led Zeppelin and The Who and the Stones. And eventually I sort of found jazz. Started getting into like jazz fusion, like Mahavishnu Orchestra and Chick Corea Return to Forever. And then like, through my brother, I got into Frank Zappa, and it just grew from there. And then eventually I started getting into people like Miles Davis and John Coltrane. And then I got into the Grateful Dead, and the band. And, there's just I've always loved funk, James Brown. So just having all these great influences and, great friends and family that sort of turned me on to a lot of stuff. And then, moving up to New York, and right when I moved to town, I got to study with Bernard Purdie, who was legendary drummer. He played with everybody like in the 60s and 70s. He still plays with everybody. He's 85 years old, and he's just got like sort of the ultimate groove. And getting to study with him right when I moved to town and just sitting in a room, a couple feet away from him was just a huge inspiration for me. And that was all going down right when I was joining the Spin Doctors too. So it was just a really inspiring time. And I think he really had a big influence on sort of where my drumming style ended up.
I think it's like much wider scope now. I can't even imagine what it would be like to start right now. When I started, it seemed like something that was like I could do for a living, and like I could spend time on it. So I mean, it's the greatest job in the world. I'm like constantly feel honored to be able to be doing this for a living. I'm just trying to figure out what it is that came out of my mouth last night, and trying to catalog it and bring it into the the realm of being a song or being a piece of music is a joy for me, and it's a constant pursuit.
Primary song. Well, when it comes to the Spin Doctors, that primary song is definitely Two Princes. That's the song we're most known by, and we're lucky enough, for it to be a very big song. And it's kind of funny because I wrote that song when I was 19 years old, and I was just like sitting on the edge of my bed with a yellow legal pad, and I was working out of a book called Writing Down the Bones, which is like one of the best books on writing ever. And the idea in this book, part of the idea is like, I was working on this concept of like having these two voices, right? You've got the creative voice, and then you've got the editing voice. And the editing voice is kind of like judgmental and a bit of a bully, and it has a place in the process. But the editing voice like has to come second. The first voice is the creative voice. So I was sort of imagining that like I had both of these voices coming out of like separate speakers, each with a volume control. So like I'm sitting there, and I'm like, got my yellow legal pad and like a Schaefer fountain pen, and I write 1, 2, princes kneel before you, princes who adore you. And I look at the page and I go, that's fucking stupid. And I stopped and I went, no, Chris, come on now, that's the editing voice. Let's turn that volume down and leave like the creative voice, like let's turn the volume up on the creative voice. And, I was like, come on though, that's stupid. And then I was like, well, just see it through. And 20 minutes later, I'd written Two Princes. And no, I didn't like necessarily know it was going to be a hit. I like, now I think I have an idea of songs that are like, very appealing. But like a song being a hit, there's a lot of like business stuff that goes into it. I think if you went through like my material and the Spin Doctors material, I do a lot of solo stuff. You went through it, you'd be like, you'd find a lot of songs that like could have been hits that weren't hits, and that all happens for like random reasons. But Two Princes, it all started with me just being like, this is stupid, and then allowing like a kinder, gentler voice to like emerge and be like, come on buddy, you can do this, just finish the idea. And thank God it did.
So if I could give one piece of advice to aspiring musicians, bands, songwriters, I would say for starters, you got to put a lot of time into whatever it is you're doing. Nothing comes easy. You've heard the expression, you got to play like 10,000 hours before you're really ready. And that's true, and I did it. So if you're let's say you're a musician, let's say you're a drummer, I mean, there's no way around those hours. You got to practice, you got to play with people. So practice playing with people. Really important to keep an open mind, listen to all kinds of music, don't be so judgmental. It's fine to figure out what you like and what you don't like, but don't talk bad about people. And you always look for the positive in something. because if something's doing well or if somebody's doing well, there's usually a very good reason for it. And as far as bands, you know, I think it's really important to, first of all, be yourself, you know, be creative. Don't try to follow all the trends, because we've already got that, you know, so find your own lane and forge ahead in it, and that's how you're going to do well. And for songwriters, you know, same thing. I mean, just keep an open mind, listen to all kinds of music, all kinds of writing, all kinds of lyrics, all kinds of instruments, and try to learn as many different instruments as you can. Even if drums or guitar or bass or piano or singing is your main thing, it's good to have a little bit of a knowledge on the other instruments, because you'll figure out how that can relate, how it all relates together. And, you know, just keep it real, play good music.
Yeah. Let's see. You know, when I was up in the apartment on the Bowery, where we wrote a lot of those songs, and Chris came in with like the verse on Little Miss Can't Be Wrong, and we started working on it. And as soon as he started playing it, I just knew it was going to be like a really, you know, I just was like, oh man, oh my God. I just knew this was going to be a song I was going to be playing for, you know, for a long time. That feeling when you hear something and you just know, you know, that you should yield and just give whatever you can right then. I think we finished it with the bridge, you know, and so, you know, that sticks in my head though. It's like music and writing music is, you know, I could go the other way. This song called Off My Line, which is like, it happened exactly the opposite way. I walked into my friend John Bell's apartment with the meat of that song and started playing it for him, and we finished it together. I guess that kind of collaboration is magic.
The Spin Doctors, like, when we got together, I was 20 and Eric was 25. Aaron is my age, our drummer, and he, like, but he'd been like a professional musician since he was like 13, 14 years old, playing like in wedding bands and stuff like that. So those guys, like, I was just sort of like a gawky, funky kid in New York City with a guitar and a song. I certainly had never played any like really professional gigs, you know. So those guys had a lot of like experience on me in a certain kind of way. And Eric and I talked a lot about like what did we want, and what we really wanted was to make a living playing music, because, you know, we talked about it, and Eric pointed out that if you're a musician that's working and making a living, you're in the, you know, in the top 90s of percentiles of people who take up music at all, you know. So it was kind of cool. That focus really worked for us, because we were working in the city and we had enough gigs to pay our rent, and we didn't have that kind of we were like hungry to play really well. We were hungry to like play music on an elite level and to have the best songs and to be really, really tight. So we were like sort of, I guess we were kind of competitive in that regard, but the money was sort of a secondary thing. We were like, as long as we have enough money to be like paying our rent and making a living, then we're going to be okay. And I think that's kind of informed us all along. I know that like of the bands of our era, we're like known for like Little Miss Can't Be Wrong and Two Princes, but like we didn't conceive of those songs as like pop songs. They were just songs that everybody went nuts when we played. And I've never written that way. I've never set out to like write hit songs. After Two Princes, I kind of like, you know, I had a lot of people pressuring me to write another Two Princes, you know. And that kind of zapped my head for a long time. But the place I'm like coming from naturally, and the place I ended up back at was like, I just like writing songs. I just want to write tunes. So when I started out writing tunes, I never like set out to write a certain kind of a song, write a pop song, or write a country song, or write any kind of genre, or something that was going to be more or less successful or more or less intellectual. Just sort of like would come up with an idea for a song, and then like the song presents a like a little cool little puzzle, like a riddle, you know, like a crossword puzzle. You have to fill in the song so that the song works and fills out the idea that you had for the song. And at the end, you don't really like, I never really quite know where it's going. And some stuff ends up being like poppy and catchy, and some stuff ends up being kind of twisted and weird. And I think that all kind of goes back to like, you know, primary goal is like, it's not really about making money. It's just about like, as long as you have enough money, if you have enough money, money doesn't matter.